Hey everyone, this is Pete, and welcome back to Atari A to Z, a series of short playthroughs of Atari 8-bit games, some which I grew up with and some which are new to me. Today's game is one of the latter. This is Fantastic Voyage, which was a 1982 release from Sirius Software, developed by David Lubar, who would later go on to make Pathfinder and Hacker for Activision, which are two very well-known games for the Atari 8-bit. The game is loosely based on the 1966 movie of the same name, in which a submarine crew are miniaturized and injected into a scientist's body to destroy a blood clot before it reaches his brain. Fantastic Voyage, the movie, is actually often mistakenly attributed to sci-fi author Isaac Asimov, when in fact it was the other way around. Asimov's novelization of Fantastic Voyage, which is pretty well known today, actually came out 6 months before the movie, but it was written based on the movie's screenplay, so the actual screenplay came first. Asimov's novelization did, on the other hand, sort of expand on a bunch of themes that were present in the movie, but not explored very much. So it is still sort of the definitive way to experience Fantastic Voyage, if you like, aside from the Atari 8-bit version, of course. I don't think that's really the case. The actual gameplay is it's a fairly straightforward vertically scrolling shooter, but there's a few interesting elements to it as well, which we'll see when we start playing. So let's go play Fantastic Voyage.
Okay, here we are with Fantastic Voyage, the official game of the 1966 movie. Or at least the game of the book or something like that anyway. So, this is how this game works. So, you are piloting the miniature submarine, as in the film, through the patient's bloodstream, and your eventual aim is to get to the blood clot that is threatening the scientist's brain. And you do that by blasting all the things that are getting in the way, but not all of them. Not all of them, because some of them are good for the patient. There's things like blood cells and stuff. I forget what each sort of symbol represents, but certain things you have to try and destroy as you progress, because they will make the patient's heart rate increase, which is what the beeping and the cardiogram at the bottom is doing. These key-shaped things, those are enzymes. If you shoot one of them, then the patient's heart rate will lower again. For a lot of other things, though, if they get past your submarine, the patient's heart rate will increase. Alright, so we're on to a new phase now. This section here, these are blood cells, so you have to just avoid these and not destroy them, because if you do destroy them, the patient's heart rate will increase and bring them closer to death. So this section is all about dodging. You also have to try and keep away from the walls of the arteries that you're in as well, because if you crash into a wall, then that will release antibodies. And those are bad. Oh, and then it gets a bit narrower, and we continue on to our next phase. So I think continuing on from now, yeah, we've got some more enzymes, so let's nab those and keep our patient fighting fit. You'll notice that the patient's heart rate is increasing as we progress anyway. That's all to do with that clock down in the bottom left corner. So as that continues to rotate, I think every time it does a full 12-hour cycle, the heart rate increases somewhat. Uh-oh. This is not going well. Oh, there's the blood clot. So we've got to destroy that. There we go. We've done it. Alright, we've saved one patient. Good stuff. Then you do it all again. And that's about it. But I believe the further you go, the more sort of interesting combinations of enemies you end up having to deal with. And the more complex the pattern of walls becomes. the more difficult it becomes to negotiate. And the more important it becomes to make sure you catch the enzymes, make sure you destroy everything before it gets past your sub. See, those little ball things, those are the antibodies. Those were released because I crashed into a wall. And they're very difficult to hit. But they are possible to hit. Alright. Past the blood cells. Again, get the enzymes. So this game also came out on 2600. And to be honest, the 2600 version looks almost identical to this. As you can see, this is not exactly a game that pushes the Atari A-bit to its limit. But it does have some nice colour cycling going on in the background. So these are bacteria, I believe. And again, if you let some of those get past you, then the patient's heart rate will increase once again. So you need to hit them several times to remove them. And obviously balance that with making sure you get to the blood clot in time. Yeah, as I say, the 2600 version of this is very visually similar to what we've got here. So big chunky pixels, fairly simple sound effects and presentation. But it does what it needs to, and when you're dealing with something that's sort of medical, I think kind of the sort of abstract presentation I think works quite well. Because it's something that if you put too much detail in there, it could be a bit gross and make people a bit squeamish, which is not necessarily a bad thing. But if you're trying to go for something that has a wide appeal, and from what I remember, Fantastic Voyage was designed to be sort of reasonably family-friendly adventure. Uh-oh. Yeah, if you're going for something with broad appeal, you don't really want to be squicking out or scaring the little kids in the family. Okay, into the blood clot stage, I think. Okay, so you can't actually destroy the little clotlets. There we go. 2 patients saved. We are on fire. Right, let's continue. Yeah, this game reminds me of a few things, really. It reminds me a bit of River Raid is probably the most obvious comparison. Because that had the sort of weaving pathway down which you had to fly and the various types of targets that you had to deal with as you progressed. It also reminds me very slightly of Vanguard as well. That multi-directional shoot-'em-up from SNK that got an Atari 5200 port. That aspect of it is mostly a sort of presentational thing. Like, I feel like the actual gameplay is a bit different to that, largely because you can't fire in different directions, but sort of the presentation of this reminds me quite a lot of the vertically scrolling stages in Vanguard that sort of preface each boss. Yeah, I actually kind of like the sparse presentation that this has got going on. The sort of that constant beeping of the heart monitor adds a nice amount of tension to the mix. And it's something a bit different from the norm as well. It's not an energy bar, it's not a set of lives or anything like that. It's a unique way of measuring progress that is very different from many of its contemporaries, which is great. It's always good to see sort of original takes on things like this, particularly when we're dealing with a genre as oversaturated as the shoot 'em up. Although shoot 'em ups have sort of evolved a great deal over the years, there were certainly a hell of a lot of them back in the 8-bit era, and a lot of them were very similar to one another. So for this game to do cool things with its presentation, yeah, that's really admirable, I think. Oh dear, I don't think our patient's going to make it. Yeah, he's in real trouble now. Come on, push on. Yeah, this is getting tough now. Oh, he's dead. I'm sorry. Flashing colours. Is that it? Yes. Alright, okay. You can also start at up to level 6, I believe. So just for contrast, I'm just going to start at that stage to see how more difficult it is. How much more difficult it is, I should say. Beg your pardon. Right. I believe it's actually technically possible to update the difficulty level you're playing at while you're playing the game. At least that's what the manual suggests, anyway. I don't know if that's actually correct or not. In fact, let's try that. Oh no, that just starts you again. It just resets the game. Okay, so you can't actually change the difficulty while you're playing, but you can reset the game and start again at a new difficulty in the middle of a game if you want to, if you find that things are a bit too difficult for you. Yeah, in a lot of ways, the heartbeat mechanic in this kind of makes this a lot more forgiving than a lot of shooters of the period. Because, I mean, you can crash into the walls and there's not a super severe consequence for that. There's just a tiny little enemy that you need to defeat. Again, there's not a severe penalty for crashing even into an enemy. That said, you do technically only have one life, so once the patient is dead, that's your game over. But given how much sort of damage the patient can take before your game is over, that's not too much of a problem, really. And considering this is difficulty 6, this is not horrendously hard. Still can't hit those bloody things though, can I? Okay, onward. Must be into the blue bit soon. That said, this does seem to be going on for a bit longer. Maybe the later difficulty levels sort of are just longer rather than more difficult. Because like we're still in this first stage at the minute. Or perhaps it's also entirely possible that the numbers aren't actually sort of increasing difficulty levels at all, but they're more a game select, like you get on some 2600 games. And it may be possible that game number 6 here is like a kid's game where you can't fail. Because, I mean, if you listen, sort of like, time is passing and the patient's heartbeat doesn't seem to be increasing at all. So I think we might be playing on a kids mode here. So let's just switch out to... Let's try number 3, 4? Can't really tell, that's the trouble. If I had the manual, that would help. I've read a PDF of the manual, but I don't have a copy to hand. Let's try 3, see what that does. Again, not noticing anything sort of significantly more difficult just yet. I think his heart rate is actually increasing this time though. Also, that stage is much shorter, isn't it? Yeah. Oh yeah, that's a bit trickier. We've got a denser set of blood cells to negotiate. Yeah, that's quite a bit more difficult, actually. Oh dear. I'm sorry. Okay, into the narrowing arteries. Going as fast as we can manage. Knocking out a few enzymes. We might actually make it if we're careful. Oh, maybe not. Oh no. Ah, so close. So close. Alright, okay. I think we get the idea of that. Today's fantastic Voyage. Like I say, probably an adaptation of the movie, or the book, or something like that. Or perhaps just a game that happens to share the same name. It's not bad. Not bad at all. I quite like that. I say it's not much of a looker. But it is pretty fun to play. It's got some interesting twists on the usual shoot 'em up formula. So, be sure to give it a go if that's something you might be interested in. So, as always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again next time. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please help out the channel by leaving a like or a comment and subscribing. New episodes of Atari A to Z are on Tuesdays and Atari ST A to Z on Thursdays. Check out atariatoz.wordpress.com for a full archive. Do please also check out my other projects moegamer.net, where I explore Japanese and Japanese-inspired games from yesterday and today, and videopackgames.wordpress.com, which aims to catalogue a small but well-formed library of the Philips G7000 Videopack computer, also known as the Magnavox Odyssey 2. You can also support my work on Patreon or buy me a coffee. You can find links to do both down in the video description. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.